Hello, everybody, and welcome in on this Wednesday morning. It is a First Alert weather day here on the First Alert news desk. I do want to let you guys know that we'll have more on your weather coming up in just a bit, in about 30 minutes, in our segment Weather Where You Are. But for now, I'm Brooks Baptiste checking in from the First Alert desk right now, where we are staying on top of all of your big stories of the morning, many of them that we need to get you caught up on right now. But I want to begin with one that seems to not only be a big story that many have watched for quite some time now, but also one that I think there's a lot of interest in because it hits so close to home, being that it happened here in Georgia. I'm talking about the accused shooter of the Appalachee High School and how his father has now been granted bond from a judge in Barrow County. Right now, again, this is a story that we are watching closely because Colin Gray is the father of the accused shooter, whose name is Colt Gray. Investigators say that Colt Gray opened fire at the high school, killing 4 people and injuring 9 others. So Atlanta News First, Bridget Spencer has a little bit more on what that means for Colin Gray and what that means for the community as well.
One by one, families of Appalachee High School shooting victims took the stand in a Barrow County courtroom, expressing the immense loss they've been dealing with.
I have 2 little girls who are going to be growing up without a daddy, 2 granddaughters.
14-year-old Colt Gray is accused of shooting and killing 4 people and injuring several others at the school in September. His father, Colin Gray, was granted a $500,000 bond.
If you were to be granted a bond by this court, and the court set certain conditions, would you abide by those conditions?
Some of the victims' families say this tragedy could have been prevented by Colin Gray.
I feel that the sheer irresponsibility of Mr. Gray as a parent robbed my family of a chance to raise my son.
Authorities feel he played a role in the tragedy, giving his son the AR-style rifle used in the shooting. Gray's attorneys argue he poses no significant threat and is not a flight risk.
Mr. Gray is innocent until he goes to trial. He's found guilty by a jury of his peers with competent evidence. That's not taken place yet.
This is an extraordinarily rare case.
Joshua Schiffer is an attorney not on this case, but has been following it closely. He believes this is something that could set a certain precedent in Georgia.
We can't find anywhere else in the history of Georgia where parents or other responsible parties are charged for the criminal actions of a third party.
Colin Gray faces charges including murder, involuntary manslaughter, and cruelty to children.
Just think about it. You're trying to basically convict someone or accuse someone of a charge of not stopping something they didn't know was going to happen. That's a very difficult burden for the state to follow.
Bridget Spencer, Atlanta News First.
For that story that, of course, we're going to be watching in the days to come. And again, we are waiting to see if he is going to bond out of jail. Again, that total that he is responsible for coming up with, $500,000, which typically, if you've known a little bit about what it means for when you're granted bond, it's just 10% of that. So that would be $50,000 that he is expected to come up with. If that happens, of course, we'll be sure to update you both on air and online. Well, right now, there are still a lot of people that are feeling the impacts of Hurricane Helene, which we know truly ravaged our state and certain parts of the South especially. Take a look at this. You remember some of this damage. You remember some of these. You can see that things are being rebuilt out there, but even right now, they're not completely done. So that means that for a lot of the people that are looking forward to the Masters, which will be in Augusta, Georgia, they're saying that because of the cleanup and the rebuilding, although the Masters is going to be in Augusta in April, they don't know if they're going to be ready. So let me clarify. The Masters should be on, where it needs to be ready. But regarding the people who are planning to use rental properties, which there are many people who say they rent out their homes all the time for so many people that come from all over the country just to partake in the Masters. But they're saying this year it looks like things are going to be a little different because one of the guys that we talked with said they've had probably 25 or 30 pine trees that fell in their yard, and the largest one actually damaged their downstairs bedroom. Well, that's a bit of an issue when you're trying to rent out your home. So some homeowners are crossing their fingers and just hoping that those repairs are going to be able to be done in time for them to rent again in April. But others are in rentals themselves right now. So definitely something and an impact that is still being felt all across our state, but especially in South Georgia. Well, parents, I want to hear from you about this because this is a story that I'm pretty sure I could guess how the kids are feeling about something like this. But the parents, I'm curious to know your thoughts. Right now, state lawmakers are considering a bill that would keep cell phones out of schools. It's called the Distraction-Free Education Act, and basically it wants to ban cell phones in elementary and middle schools statewide. Now, the bill's sponsor says he consulted safety experts before proposing this legislation because his argument is, in the case of an emergency, the last thing that officials would want is for and excuse me, let me get this video. There we go. He was saying that the last thing that he would want or need is for a child to be stuck trying to use their phone or their device. Instead, he believes that officials would rather them listen to the instructions of those safety experts so that they can get to a safe place in the event there is an emergency. Well, school districts would have the power to enforce this, and that could mean putting phones in pouches or even another policy that they could enact. But the bottom line here is that this is called the Distraction-Free Education Act, and it wants to ban cell phones in elementary and middle schools statewide here in Georgia. So we'll be watching that closely to see what happens. And while we're on the topic of school, let's take you out here to Sandy Springs, where you might want to be careful if you're ever out in that area and you're there in a school zone. Here is why. Take a look at this. There are new speed zone cameras that are now in effect near two Sandy Springs schools. So they are set up outside North Springs High School and Riverwood International Charter School. Those warnings are being issued right now, but starting March 27th, they're going to be sending tickets out. And if you've ever been in one of those school zones, you know how easy it is. Well, really, so it's a cool concept because it keeps kids safe. And this is literally just me telling you what I've experienced as I've been out and about. I've seen in certain neighborhoods where they've had these cameras. There are a lot of lights to warn you that you are going into a school zone, and also a lot of lights that are warning you that your speed is above what it's supposed to be in that school zone. But here's the deal. If you don't adhere to that school zone speed limit, you will receive something in the mail that you probably don't want to receive. Everybody likes a check in the mail, but nobody likes a ticket in the mail, right? So that's what you would receive from officials. And I've talked to people who have violated the speed zone, and they have said that literally it just comes in the mail, and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't even know there was anything that indicated that I was getting a ticket. You don't have to. As long as it captures your license plate and it captures the speed that you were going at, those officials can then send a ticket your way. Well, how about some very good news on this Wednesday morning before we wrap up here? We've got to give a quick shout out to Outkast, which is now being considered one of the groups nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now, this is very exciting because anytime Atlanta's out there on the map, we want to, give a quick shout out. But there are two Atlanta-based music groups that are among 14 bands nominated for a spot in the coveted Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We're talking about Outkast, which is that hip-hop duo that is famous for pushing the boundaries of the genre, and the Black Crowes, which is a band that is known for its blend of hard rock and blues. They could all be inducted into the hall this year, and it's the first time that either group has been on the ballot. So Andre 3000 and Big Boy, we know them both from Outkast in 1992 as high school students crafting music that elevated Atlanta as a cultural and musical hub. We still give a lot of credit to them. Meanwhile, you've got brothers Chris and Rich Robinson that started the Black Crowes in Atlanta back in 1984, so an 80s group. They mix Southern boogie, stuttering stomp, blues, harmonica, glam, rock, and 70s harmonies, starting with their debut album, Shake Your Money Maker. Now look, two different styles of music. Maybe you know one and not the other, but because they are both groups from Atlanta and because they are both nominated for such an honor, let's make sure we know about both of them. For sure. All right, remember, you can always catch up on the news on AtlantaNewsFirst.com and, of course, on the free Atlanta News First app. But I do want to give you this give you a live look outside where you can see that it is so gloomy out there, and it's actually been quite rainy on this First Alert weather day. This is a live look over Lake Lanier. We'll have an update for you at 11:30 and weather where you are from our team of First Alert meteorologists who will get you caught up on what's happening in your area and all across North Georgia. Make it a great one. We'll see you back here at noon.